Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart, where we strive to put love at the center of how we show up in the world. So each week, during our Sunday morning worship services, we join together in affirming that love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer. And this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Since not everyone can attend in person, we are streaming this worship service online, and we extend a special welcome to all who are joining us virtually. The joys and sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will temporarily pause the stream for that. Other than that, this worship service is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on our website. Today, our worship service will be led by our minister, Pastor Tom. Please turn off or silence your devices, and as you do so, allow yourself to enter sacred time together and take a breath. And another. And join in the spirit of reverence. For millennia, people have gathered together to hear stories, to root for the underdog, to jeer the evil and the unkind. We see in our stories mirrors to our own lives, where we hope good things will happen to good people, and that evil will be vanquished. This morning, we gather for a story, for cheering and jeering, for hope and for justice. May this ancient story shed new light on our own lives, and may we know ourselves connected to millions of listeners who have come before us and millions of listeners who will come after. Let us worship together. Universalism. It suggests that transformation that takes place when we are held within religious community. When we light the chalice in worship, we illuminate a world that we feel called upon to serve with love and a sense of justice. Please join us now in lighting our chalice by reading together the words on the screen and in your order of service. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and need, in celebration of the life we share together.
So we are a community that gathers around covenant rather than creed, around the agreements that we democratically make with each other as opposed to set beliefs with which we are supposed to agree. So I would invite you to join in our recovenanting this morning, of coming back into a covenant in any ways that we might have drifted, just as a part of our breathing together as a community. So I'll read off a few lines of our covenant, and then after each part, I would invite you to respond with, "May we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love." So for all the ways that we have not dwelled together in peace, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not sought the truth in love, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. And for all the ways that we have not helped one another, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. So having recovenanted with one another, I invite you to just look around these beautiful folks in this space. Maybe wave your hand, smile at them, greet them in some way. The folks on the other side of the screens who are joining us over Zoom or YouTube as well. Glad to have you all with us this morning. And then I invite you to open your gray hymnals to hymn 338, Rise in Body or Spirit, and join in singing, I Seek the Spirit of a Child. Please be seated. So I'm going to come around the room with this microphone to welcome any joys or sorrows that you might have, anything that has been sitting in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, that you feel called to share with us so that we might know what is held within you. And the sharing of our inner contents, thank you for the microphone. The sharing of our inner contents is what reveals ourselves to other folks, has them know us a little bit better, and gives us the opportunity to return the favor. So does anybody have a joy or a sorrow they'd like to share? Yeah. So this week we start a new series, and this one is going to be about how to deal with functioning in a society in which we and people who might agree with us in some respects are not in power. And just as an aside, we weren't in power before, but it's pretty clear that we are not now. So this first week we're going to be focusing on just our relationship with ourselves. It's a really key thing that we can jump past when there's a sense of urgency, when it feels like something's important, but it's also the building block on which everything rests. So it's important that we not skip past that. And so that's my invitation, that's my question for us this morning, to contemplate for a couple of minutes to ourselves and then to share with one another, is how can you tell when your relationship with yourself is thriving? How can you tell when your relationship with yourself is thriving? And so I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that, just silently to yourself as Jeremy plays, and then we'll talk about it with one another for just a brief amount of time, just to share some of the highlights that we feel comfortable sharing. But just to consider to yourself, how can you tell when your relationship with yourself is thriving? And then just turn to one person sitting next to you, maybe two at the absolute most, and just share some headlines of what came up for you. And I'll let you know, you just got 2 minutes for the both of you to share with each other, and I'll let you know when to come back together again. Okay, thank you everybody for sharing. Thanks for offering to each other, whatever was coming up for you, whatever you had in response that was arising that felt like it could be spoken, like you're up for sharing it. And so I'm going to ask for maybe 2 or 3 folks to just report back, let us know maybe something that you heard, maybe something that you said that stuck out to you. What's a way that you can tell that your relationship with yourself is thriving?
I'm Connie Barnes. This is my husband, Brian Barnes. We managed to lose 2 credit cards within a 2-week period, Discover and Freedom. We had to get a brand new Discover card, but Strax had my Freedom card. And no, we didn't kill each other.
So refraining from murder is a good way to tell that your relationship with yourself is thriving.
I'm Jeff. We decided that it was you're thriving when you experience the absence of ruminating, that you're living a bit more in the moment, and instead of going over things constantly in your brain that you really don't need to review one more time because you did that for the last hour. So that was an indication that maybe you're thriving a little bit better.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, lack of rumination on the unnecessary. Yeah.
Hi, I'm David. This kind of builds on that. I noticed the sense of like play or fun or ease are real hallmarks for me of when I'm feeling good about how I'm doing in life.
Beautiful. Yeah, play, fun, ease. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody. And we'll, in the spirit of play, fun, and ease, we've got a digital story for you this morning. So if the tech team could bring that up, watch the screen. Sound?
I was little, something incredible happened. My grandma gave me a special gift.
What is it, Big Mama?
You'll know when you need it.
Today, whenever I need help dealing with white people, I can always call on my inner white girl.
Next, please.
I just want to withdraw some cash.
Okay, Miss Jones. Oh gosh, looks like you're overdrawn.
What? That can't be right.
That's what I'm showing. There's also a $60 penalty.
What? No! Oh, hell no, no!
It's okay, Leslie. We can work it out.
No, I don't need you right now. Go. I got this. What the hell you mean, $60?
It's clearly a mistake. Just ask her to double check.
Fine. Can you please double check? I made a deposit 2 days ago.
Oh, wow. Looks like there is a mistake. They didn't process your check correctly. I'm really sorry.
No problem. Thanks, inner white girl.
Of course. I'll credit your account electronically.
Electronically? Hold up, what does that mean? That I have to imagine my money is magically going to someplace in my account? Man, this bitch think I'm stupid.
No, she doesn't. This happens all the time, even to white people.
Man, I don't know about that.
Leslie, don't you remember the other times that I've helped you? That employee accused you of stealing that Michael Kors purse?
That was my damn purse. I paid for that.
Right. Is she? Okay. And with my help, you logged a formal complaint, and then you got another free purse.
I ain't even know complaints could be formal. But look at this bank, it's filled with money. Why they can't give me mine?
Well, maybe you should just say to her, can I have that in cash?
I prefer it in cash.
I'm not sure we can do it that way.
What? Come on.
Why don't you ask to speak to a manager?
A manager? That is the craziest thing you done said all day. All right, inner white girl. Can I speak to a supervisor, please?
Let me get him. By the way, I love your hair.
Yup. This bitch is racist.
She's not racist. She really does love your hair. People want what they can't have.
Well, then I want my $60.
Is everything all right over here?
Really? Here we go. Why you messing with me? Cause I'm black?
No, he's here because you're talking to yourself.
You do look kind of crazy right now.
Bluetooth, man. Bluetooth.
All right.
Bluetooth.
Just checking.
Yeah, right. You was doing more than checking, yo. Now they want me to talk to some manager. I ain't talking to no manager. I
All right.
don't do managers, dog.
Okay, Miss Jones. We're ready to give you the cash. It's just going to be about 10 or 15 minutes.
What?
Oh, Lord. White people do not like to wait.
10 to 15 minutes. That is unacceptable. You're going to call that security guard over here, and we are really going to deal with this.
I am not white like you. I will go to jail.
We have so much better stuff to do with our time. We could go to yoga, we could go to Starbucks, get a Frappuccino.
I need you to calm down.
I've got better to do. We have got to get out of here.
Okay, sir. No problem.
I don't like this at all.
People wait all the time.
We're not banking here anymore.
I'll be here.
Great. Thank you.
Unacceptable.
White people aren't always right. They helped me out today, though. And as I go out into white America, I'm glad that I have my inner white girl.
So I invite you now in our responsive reading. The words are in your order of service, or also on the screen, perhaps. Yes. And so follow along with the blue text, and I will read the non-blue, non-italicized text. So despair is sapping our spirits, damaging our souls, hurting our hearts. We need to be resurrected into hope, faith, and trust. Today, may we be resurrected. Violence is shortening our lives and robbing us of our joy. We need to be resurrected into peace and its many blessings. Today, may we be resurrected. Selfishness is tearing our social fabric, hiding us from one another, turning us inward. We need to be resurrected into generosity, compassion, and open-heartedness. Today, may we be resurrected. Fear is pitting us against each other, stripping our delight, poisoning our relationships. We need to be resurrected into courage and connection. Today, may we be resurrected. Injustice is devaluing and dehumanizing us all, punishing some terribly, frightening others deeply. We need to be resurrected into justice and healing. Today, may we be resurrected. Hatred is breeding despair, violence, selfishness, fear, and injustice among us and among our children. We need to be resurrected into love. Today, may we be resurrected. So may it be. Amen. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 1059 in the Teal hymnals, May Your Life Be as a Song. Please be seated. So when I was a kid, as I've talked about in previous sermons, I really loved watching movies. I watched as many of them as I could get my hands on, as much time as I could spend watching videos that we'd gotten from the video store. And one of my favorites as a kid was the movie Commando, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is, I got a chance to revisit when I was in my 20s. I had a friend who had seen the news that Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected to be governor of California, and she'd never seen a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. And so she said, Tom, I know you've seen a lot of movies. Have you ever seen an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie? And I said, well, yes, I have. And she said, well, would you show me one? I want to understand what his appeal is. And so I said, sure, let's watch Commando. And have any of you ever seen the movie Commando? A couple hands. It's a smaller budget film. I wouldn't say that the writing is particularly amazing, but it has some of the best one-liners in like 80s action movie history. There was this one scene in particular where Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to go storm this island, and he has a boat that he takes there, and there's a whole bunch of gear and grenades and stuff on there. He managed to get from the boat onto the island in his Speedo. And the friend that I was watching this with said, oh, now I understand. Now I understand why he was elected governor of California. But there's one-liners in the movie. There's one scene where he tells one of the bad guys, he promises that he's going to kill him last. And then there's a scene where he finally captures him, and he's interrogating him, and he's holding him by one ankle over a cliff. And he says, remember, Sully, when I promised to kill you last? And Sully says, oh, yes, you did. You promised to kill me last. And he says, I lied, and he lets go. And the guy tumbles to his death. And then when he gets back to his compatriot in the car, she says, what did you do with Sully? And he says, I let him go. And there's another scene where he's fighting with this other guy, and the guy says, are you scared? Well, you should be, because this Green Beret is going to kick your butt. And Arnold Schwarzenegger responds with, I eat Green Berets for breakfast, and right now I am very hungry. So there's a continual stream of one-liners like that, and there's a satisfying feeling to like, he said the witty thing, and he got his comeuppance over the bad guy. And that tends to be that desire for the perfect resolution is something that we are very used to. It's something that we look for. It's something that we hope for. It's something that we aim for of how can I do the thing that solves the problem, that fixes things, that gets us to a place where we get a sense of, great, everything worked out in the end. It's so nice when the good guy gets his way and the bad guy has to pay. But so much of that, of course, this is a movie, so much of that is just perception. When I used to work for the Working Families Party in New York City, it was really interesting to be working for a political party with people who knew the elected officials and at the same time be reading articles in the paper that had a somewhat different take of, that's interesting. Then I would talk to one of my coworkers who was in the know, and I would get the fuller explanation of what was actually happening in the halls of power, beneath whatever the headlines were. The Working Families Party was based on this idea of fusion voting, which used to be how elections worked across the country, where instead of having this is the Democratic candidate and this is the Republican candidate and this is the Green Party candidate and so on down the line, you could have one candidate who was running on multiple different lines at the same time. So one person could run on 3 different party lines, and they would get the votes from all of them tallied in together to see if they won. And that started getting rolled back in the early 20th century when the Republicans and the Democrats wanted to shore up their power. So most states don't have that anymore. New York State is one of the states that does still have fusion voting. And after working there for a while, I realized that one of the main benefits of fusion voting is that you have a specific tally. In most instances, if a political party gets an endorsement from, let's say, a labor union or a nonprofit or something like that, they can put, we were endorsed by this at some point, but there's no tally of what impact that has. In fusion voting, you can say, we delivered 3,428 votes to you last time, and if you don't help us out with these things, then we're not going to work together in the future. We're not going to endorse your candidate. We're not going to run them on our line. So it takes something that is kind of a vague public perception, and it makes it concrete. The vague public perception is so much of what politics is about. So what are we perceiving these days? What are we perceiving about the political situation? There's this phrase that you might have heard that Steve Bannon popularized a few years ago called flooding the zone. This idea that, we just throw a whole bunch of stuff in there and we keep them overwhelmed and they can't really keep their eye on the ball. And certainly anybody who's been paying attention to the news over the past week or two might have some sense of what it feels like when the zone has been flooded. Foreign aid freeze, leaving millions without HIV treatment, putting them at grave risk. Neutering the National Labor Relations Board. Elon Musk trying to gain operational control over the Treasury's payment system, which processes the federal spending that makes up more than a fifth of the US economy. People who are in the middle of experimental drug trials or with devices in their bodies being left in limbo. Sending letters to people like the chair of the Federal Election Commission declaring their immediate removal. Trying to send trans women into federal prison facilities for men. Massive data purges of the Centers for Disease Control, NOAA, Census, Office of Personnel Management, the Department of Labor, opening investigations targeting pro-Palestine activism, U.S. aid staff finding themselves in a foreign country, in all likelihood a place they moved to despite terrorism or security risks, now being treated as if they're somehow an enemy of the state. And there's the impacts of this funding freeze. The Appalachian Center for Independent Living in Charleston, West Virginia, for instance, gets about 70% of its funding from the Department of Health and Human Services, which they use to help people with disabilities live independently. And so they had to tell a young man with disabilities that the group would not be able to provide him training to begin his new job at the Goodwill store because the trainer was one of the 3 out of a staff of 5 who had initially been laid off in response to the funding freeze. They also had to cancel a food pantry order that would have fed 75 people. In Wisconsin, this is just a few very small examples. In Wisconsin, the United Migrant Opportunity Service closed a unit that helped people, primarily those working in landscaping and other manual labor jobs, to navigate how to apply online for unemployment assistance. And without that assistance, some people could soon be evicted. And in Vermont, another nonprofit was unable to distribute checks to families of children with disabilities. Some of the families had been waiting for weeks for the funds to help defray the costs of specialized equipment and medical procedures which are not covered by health insurance. Among those affected was a family with a child who dangerously wanders at night, who had been approved to receive a specialized safety bed. So I wanted to go from the big picture to the very, very small. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that is going on in the wider world. And so just having recounted some of that, I want to take a moment to just pause. How are you feeling in your body? In your heart? In your mind? Maybe from some of the things I said, maybe from some stuff that you have seen that I didn't recount or point to, that you're holding on to from what you've seen in the news or on social media in some way. How does it sit with you? Devastated. Yeah. And so in the light of the facts, I want to invite you into a practice. First, just finding your seat, just noticing the seat that you're sitting on right now, the whatever's supporting your body, holding it up, maybe the back of the seat, the cushion that your rear's on. Wiggle your toes so you notice where your feet are in space. Find your feet. And just breathe in this space. Just breathe in this space. You are here now. You are here now. No other place but this moment, no other time but this moment. Just let a gentle hand, your left hand, your right hand, whichever, just move to your heart. And just silently, just inside your own head, say to yourself, I am here. I am here. And notice however you're feeling, whether it's devastation or upset or fear or irritation or however any of this might be living for you. Just noticing whatever word or two comes closest to summing up what you're feeling right now in this moment. And whatever that word or two is, you can just say silently to yourself, I am sensing something in me feels blank. So if it's devastated, I am sensing something in me feels devastated. Or if it's upset, I am sensing something in me feels upset. Or if it's scared, I am sensing something in me feels scared. And then say silently to yourself, to whatever part of you is feeling that way, hello, I am here with you. Hello, I am here with you. Letting that one part of yourself greet that other part of yourself. And then just notice if you feel slightly calmer. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And I'll welcome you to let your hand drop and come back into the space. It's so easy for us to get taken over by our emotions. But there is an alternative. Ann Weiser-Cornell has talked about learning to pause. Pausing is the very first step towards powerful change. When you pause, you create the space where you can choose what happens next. It isn't about stopping the emotions or making them go away. It's about creating a moment where you can notice what's happening. And in that moment, you have the power to choose what to do next. In that moment of pause, you have the power to choose what to do next. UU theologian Tandeka has talked about how that pause can be described as the elemental building block of any spiritual practice, whether it be Buddhist meditation or Christian contemplation or anything else. There's some aspect of pausing in there. And in that pausing, we can choose to go on a different path or stay on the same one, or whichever makes the most sense. And it's a bigger practice than just the pause. There's lots of ways that can take root. But I wanted to at least touch on the initial building block this morning. UU ethicist Sharon Welch has talked about how the dominant ethic in our society is an ethic of control. That doesn't mean that all of us need to be in control all the time, but there's particular ways that each of us feel like we need to be in control. And one of the things I appreciate about that SNL video is that each of the characters have the ways that they're free to not be in control, whether it's time or something else, and each of the characters have some way that they feel like they do need to be in control. So sometimes we feel like, oh, as long as I'm in control in these parts of my life, then I can feel spaciousness in these parts. So how is it that you feel a need to be in control? I know for me, having recounted some of the news stories, I wish I was in control of the federal government in some way. Of like, oh, I wish I could make the calls to not have these things be happening the way they are. But even the fantasy for myself is still that playing out of the same pattern. A sense of there being some kind of fixed power that I can take hold of and that I can use for my own purposes, whether they're good purposes or bad purposes. There's some kind of power to be feared or to be courageous against or to act upon. But political power has so much more to do with perception than reality. When we valorize absolute power and don't see it as problematic in and of itself, then we become susceptible to the propaganda of people who are in power. And the attraction of power overrides our critical judgment, in Sharon Welch's words. There was an article that was written in 1986 about what was going on in Congress at that point. And why is this Congress that is overwhelmingly composed of Democrats who are put in there, why are they going along with Reagan's agenda? There was a narrative of there'd been this huge conservative turn in the American electorate. And so Congress was going along with that and deciding that they were going to join with Reagan in establishing the country on a firm footing going in this new direction. But of those who voted for Reagan, only 6% identified his conservatism as something that mattered to them. 6% of the people who voted for Reagan even cared that much about him being conservative. And it's not like he was hugely popular across the whole public. He did receive a large share of the vote, almost 60% in 1984, but that's only 32% of the eligible voters because of what the turnout was that year. That's less than Eisenhower received in 52 and 56, less than Kennedy received in 1960, less than Johnson received in 1964, less than Nixon received in 1972. Reagan was not the most popular president in the post-war period. But Congress and the media went along with this idea of overwhelming power, and so the myth became the reality. When we put absolute power, when we put control up on a pedestal, it becomes very tempting to start to believe in those narratives of who is in power. Well, they're in power, they might get their way. We're in power, we might get our way. This fashioning of God in our society in the image of the Egyptian, the Persian, the Roman imperial rulers meant that the church gave unto God the attributes which belonged exclusively to Caesar. As I talked about in our worship series back in the fall, ever since quantum mechanics came around in the 20th century, we have a sense that the universe is put together differently than people assumed for centuries upon centuries. The universe is contingent. We are related to one another by chance. We can choose different ways of organizing ourselves. In our culture, with hundreds of years of history of idealizing absolute power in this fantasy of an omnipotent God, a fantasy which was patterned after the fantasy of an omnipotent emperor, on a subconscious level, absolute power seems like the ideal. And so when we feel like we're further from power in that setup, we start to be disillusioned. We start to feel cynical. And sometimes we start to acquiesce. This sort of way of seeing the world has been provided for us. Has anybody ever heard of the Hayes production code? Okay, a handful of folks. So for 30 or 40 years, depending on when exactly you mark the beginning and the ending, there was this code in Hollywood of what you are allowed to do and not allowed to do in the movies. And it fell away in the 60s, and it was replaced by the Motion Picture Association of America with, not A and B ratings. That's not how movies work. G ratings, PG ratings, PG-13, R, etc., which replaced this do and do not list. And on that production code, the Hayes production code that lasted for 2 generations, there's 2 generations of Americans who were inculcated into a particular kind of morality, in which all criminal action had to be punished, and neither the crime nor the criminal could elicit sympathy from the audience, or the audience must at least be aware that such behavior is wrong, usually through compensating moral value. Authority figures had to be treated with respect, and the clergy could not be portrayed as comic characters or villains. Maybe bring that one back. Under some circumstances, politicians, police officers, judges could be villains as long as it was clear that those individuals portrayed as villains were the exceptions to the rule. So there was a sense of the universe is ordered in a way that we can expect and trust and should not fall afoul of. It was 2 generations of Hollywood propaganda in this country. This way of seeing the world has implications. In our society, the default theology is one in which what matters is control, of making sure that the right thing happens. And if somebody's doing a bad thing, stopping them. If there's a wrong, then it must be righted. In our society, the default theological anthropology is one of getting people to fit into the boxes that we have set for them. And sometimes that can be not a bad thing. I mean, if we have a good sense of right and wrong, if we have a good sense of what is ethical, that's not the worst thing in the world. But the underlying framework is still about getting our agenda through. How does that framework play out? We currently live in an attention economy, where it is our attention that people make money off of. What are some of the wealthiest some wealthiest companies in the world? What was that? Nestle has a fair amount of money. Even bigger than that? Google? Disney? Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram and stuff. Google is certainly up there. Amazon? Microsoft. So much of these companies are based on where is your attention going? What are you clicking on? What are you watching? There was a really amazing book that came out a few years ago called Stolen Focus by Johann Hari, where he specifically talks about campaigns by employees within Facebook, within Google, to say, hey, it looks like our product is not serving the better nature of the people in the world, and maybe we should make some modifications. And so they said, oh, that sounds like a really great idea. We're going to make a special department in our company, and you're still making your salary, and now you're focused on writing reports, and you can tell us how to do everything better. And so they would write out these thoroughly thought through, researched reports about how they can modify Google or Facebook to make it into a better product that's not destroying our ability to focus or attend to things. And they would make these proposals, and then every single time it would, oh, that's very nice, but that would cut into our profits if we did that. Oh, that sounds like that would be really good, but no, thank you, that's okay. And so gradually, those people who were writing those reports ended up getting disheartened and leave. Our society is full of distractions that at an individual level leave us diminished. In Johann Hari's words, when you are unable to pay sustained attention, you can't achieve the things you want to achieve. You want to read a book, but you're pulled away by the pings and paranoias of social media. You want to spend a few uninterrupted hours with your child, but you keep anxiously checking your email to see if your boss is messaging you. You want to set up a business, but your life dissolves instead into a blur of Facebook posts and only makes you feel envious and anxious. Through no fault of your own, there never seems to be enough stillness, enough cool, clear space for you to stop and think. Imagine you're driving a car, but somebody has thrown a big bucket of mud all over the windshield. You're going to face a lot of problems in that moment. You're at risk of knocking off your rear view mirror or getting lost or arriving at your destination late. But the first thing you need to do before you worry about any of those problems is to clean your windshield. Until you do that, you don't even know where you are. We need to deal with our attention problems before we ever try to achieve any other sustained goal. So that's a bigger project than we can do in a day or a week or anything like that. But this practice of pausing, of just checking in with ourselves, which I'll ask you to do just again in this moment. What are you feeling in your body? What are you noticing in your mind, in your heart? And can you welcome whatever that is? And from that point, make a choice about what to do or put your attention on next. In the words of New York Times columnist Ezra Klein, if you're always consumed by the next outrage, you can't look closely at the last one. And then the impression of Trump's power remains. And the fact that he keeps stepping on rakes continually in the courts is missed. The projection of strength obscures the reality of weakness. There are lots of challenging things going on right now. There will continue to be challenging things for the foreseeable future. But coming back to our ability to pause and choose a next action allows us to free ourselves from that ethic of control, of freaking out when we don't have the power to make things as we would like them to be. and come back to what Sharon Welch calls an ethic of risk. In the despite of a problematic world, and despite an imperfect scenario that we are faced with, how can we still, despite everything, lift up capacities for goodness? Still lift up possibilities for the future that are based in the relationships that we are creating in the present. In that spirit, I want you to invite you into, over this coming week, in everything that you do, just noticing, is this thing that I'm doing leaving me with more energy to engage in the struggle or less? Is this thing that I'm doing leaving me more drained or less drained to continue creating these beautiful possibilities for the future? Just taking those moments to pause and noticing where you're at can make all the difference. I invite you into that inquiry.
We choose to welcome the Spirit of life, join in our aliveness, and share our resources. This month, we are sharing the Loose Change for Social Change offering with the Morning Bishop Theater Playhouse, and I want to thank Cindy for adding some more knowledge about that. Thank you. The money in the baskets goes to sustaining the mission of our congregation. The money in the cups goes to the Playhouse. For those not with us in person today, there's an online link for both one-time and regular donations. Would 4 volunteers please come forward? For your prayers, your presence, your service, and your gifts, we are truly grateful. Another way we walk together is by joining together for fun and fellowship. And I want to thank whoever put together this insert. There's so much good information in there. Obviously today is our Super Soup Sunday. And next week is the Pledge Drive Luncheon, so I encourage you to read about that. Also, we have our discussion on the book on tyranny coming up, and it's not too early. It's about 2 months, 2 weeks, the rummage sale. So if you're starting to clean something out, keep that in mind. Okay. Any other announcements? Yeah.
This isn't really an announcement. It should have been said during Joys and Concerns, but Grant Fitch, who has sung with us, and the choir who's performed here, and he's talked about our dear friend Chuckles, who's been in and out of the hospital, is now going into hospice care and coming to live with him, and he just wanted me to share that this morning.
Thank you. Maggie. Okay. Now, please rise in body or spirit to join in singing number 368, Now Let Us Sing. Our closing words, number 695. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe.
Freedom!
Now I invite you to join in reciting the words in blue to accompany our extinguishing of the chalice. May we continue to carry in our hearts the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment, until we are together again. And remember, we have wonderful soup awaiting you. $5 a bowl. Keep coming back for refills. Hope to see you there.